What if the last survivor of a forgotten war wasn't human? And what if the only man who found it had already sworn never to follow another killing order? Tonight, on a silent outpost beneath a dead sky, one choice will decide everything. Whether war ends here or begins again. The warning didn't arrive with sound. It came as a sudden pulse of red light across the control wall, sharp, invasive, as if the station itself had flinched. Ryan Hale stepped away from the maintenance panel automatically, his hand still stained with lubricant from the servo unit he had been repairing. Once, he was a frontline drone strike operator for the Earth Strategic Corps. Now he lived alone as the sole caretaker of Outpost THETA-9. No command structure. No squad. Just machines to tend. And silence to keep. Outside the reinforced window, the horizon of U-17 looked like scorched metal cooling after impact. Wind pushed pale dust across the fractured earth. The air recycler rattled with each breath, exhaling a cold that felt older than peace. Long after the final ceasefire, this place still held the memory of heat and fire. Radar remained blank. No motion alerts. But the thermal feed told a different truth. A single heat trace. Small. Moving. Living. Ryan stared at it, pulse tightening. If something was still alive out there, it had survived what war could not. And if it had survived that, he could not afford to stand still. He grabbed his field jacket and the portable bioscan MKIV from the rack. His thumb brushed across the worn serial numbers on the casing. The device hummed to life against his palm. A familiar vibration that anchored him. More than he liked to admit. The outer access hatch complained as it cycled. Metal grinding against seals that had seen too many storms. And not enough maintenance crews. U-17's air hit him as the lock opened, thin, dry, metallic, carrying the ghost of burned propellant. His visor display overlaid the environment with faint contours. Temperature gradients, ground fractures. Fragments of old impact craters half filled with dust. The heat trace lay just outside the perimeter. Near the twisted remains of an old sensor mast. Never salvaged after the war. The thermal marker pulsed on his wrist screen. Like a slow heartbeat. He moved carefully across the grit-covered platform. And down the short service ramp. Boots scraping on metal. Each step echoing more loudly than it should. In the open air. The wind pulled at his jacket. Tugging at loose seams. Dragging dust along his ankles. He felt exposed. In a way he had not felt in years. Halfway to the mast, the signal jittered. The dot flickered on his display. As if whatever it represented was trying to decide whether to flee or collapse. He rounded the base of the broken structure. And saw it. For an instant, his brain chose the simple answer. Dog. The size. The curve of the spine. The angle of the limbs. But then, the details refused to cooperate. The legs were longer than any dog he had known. Joints subtly offset. As if adapted to unstable terrain. The fur was short and dense. Patterned in broken streaks. Matching the color of the surrounding dust. Along its flanks, beneath dirt and dried blood, he saw faint lines of scar tissue. Too regular to be accidental. An old harness had once gripped its shoulders and chest. But the harness was gone. Its head rested against the ground. Eyes half closed. Ears laid flat. Not in calm, but in exhaustion. When it breathed, its ribs shifted unevenly. Pulling air like every inhale. Cost something. The bioscan chimed softly. He looked down at the readout. Scrolling across the small screen. Tissue markers in two conflicting colors. Baseline sequences from U-17's native fauna. Overlaid with modified canine strain. Military grade. A hybrid designed for a purpose. Then somehow left behind. Someone built you, he said quietly. The creature's eyes snapped open. Not human. Not animal. The pupils, thin, almost vertical. Widened and narrowed. With startling precision. As they locked on his faceplate. For a moment. There was no recognition. Only evaluation. Then, a faint vibration rolled through the air. Low. Beneath hearing. Felt more than heard. The old sensor mast above him rattled. A distant echo replied. From the direction of the outpost. Inside the station. Something powered up. Ryan felt it in his boots. Before he heard it. A subtle, rising hum. Of dormant systems awakening. The drone racks. Cycling a long silent diagnostic. The creature's ears twitched toward the sound. Muscles tightened along its back. A shiver rippled beneath the skin. The bioscan flashed a new line of data. Neural activity increasing along the spine. Electroreceptive cells spiking. Near the surface. It was not just hearing the noise. It was feeling. The field. The hum grew louder. The creature's gaze tracked upward. Toward the racks. Then back to him. Its body pressed lower to the ground. Not in surrender. But in preparation. He had seen that posture before. In combat footage. On training fields. That was how soldiers moved. When they sensed incoming fire. Before the first shot. Ryan knelt slowly. Making sure every movement. Remained visible. Deliberate. The wind caught a loose strand of hair. And snapped it against his cheek. "You know that sound," he murmured. He reached into his jacket. And pulled out a ration pack. The seal tore. With a flat, plasticky crack. The creature's nostrils flared. It caught the smell of processed protein. Its eyes shifted, pack. To face. Back again. Calculating. He placed the food on the ground. Just beyond the reach of its front paws. Then eased his hand away. For several seconds. Nothing moved but the dust. Then it inched forward. Muscles trembling from effort. Its nose brushed the edge of the pack. A faint electric prickling. Danced across the back of Ryan's hand. Even though he had already withdrawn. As if the very air. Grew sharper. Around its body. The bioscan confirmed what his skin already guessed. Elevated electromagnetic output. At the surface. Specialized cells. Clustered along the flanks and neck. Like a natural antenna. Buried under fur. A living sensor array. The animal ate slowly. Each bite measured. As if every chew. Was a choice. To keep trying. Wind roared briefly across the flats. Then fell silent. Far above them. The outpost cycled down the drone racks. It had briefly awakened. Fooled by a test sequence. The creature's ears followed. The fading vibration. The way a soldier might track. The distant roll of artillery. Not a dog. Not a wild thing. Something made for war. And somehow left. To survive. Without it. Ryan watched it swallow. The last of the ration. And lift its head again. The eyes settled on him. Measuring. As if marking him. As just one more unknown. In a world. That had tried. To kill everything. It touched. He exhaled slowly. Briefly fogging the inside of his visor. "Welcome to Outpost THETA-9, he said. "You should not be here." By the time he guided the creature inside. The artificial evening cycle had begun to dim the lights in the main corridor. Emergency strips glowed low along the floor. Casting a faint halo around its paws. As it walked hesitantly beside him. It moved with a limp on its left hind leg. Each step landing carefully. As if it had learned the cost of putting weight in the wrong place. When a pipe groaned overhead. Its ears flicked toward the sound, then back again. Tracking vibrations through metal. Inside the medical alcove. Ryan sealed the door. And engaged the localized air scrubbers. The creature stood in the center of the room. Head raised. Nose twitching. Mapping new scents of antiseptic and old dust. He set the bioscan on the counter. And pulled up a deeper profile. Structural bone density, augmented. Cardiovascular system, reinforced. Neural clusters strengthened along the spine. Linking skin receptors. To deeper processing nodes. Everything about it. Had been designed. With intent. Hybrid reconnaissance life form. Field designation, unknown. Tag marker. Removed or destroyed. There was only one kind of unit that matched those readings. Once, during the last year of the war, his squad had seen a briefing about experimental guide animals. Creatures that could walk ahead of infantry patrols. Feel the echo of cloaked drones. And mines buried beneath the soil. The concept had seemed cruel. Even then. The program was reported cancelled. After the treaty. Yet one of those prototypes was standing in his med bay, watching every move he made. He cleaned the wound slowly. The animal flinched at the sting. Then went still. Eyes fixed on his face. Breathing hard through its nose. Its skin twitched under his touch. The electric tingle returning. In irregular bursts. "You feel everything, do you?" he said. Its tail moved slightly. Not trust. Not fear. Something suspended between. The station's intercom crackled to life. Outpost THETA-9. This is Earthcom Relay Command Node A31. Standby for encrypted transmission. Priority Tier 3. Ryan's chest tightened. Priority Tier 3 meant something that could alter his assignment. Or end it. He sealed the med bay. And left the creature on the padded floor. Bioscan still monitoring vitals. In the control room. The main display had already shifted to the communications interface. Lines of code streamed past. As the Earthlink comm array locked into tight beam connection. Outpost THETA-9. Confirm identity. Ryan Hale, maintenance officer. He replied. Station is stable. Awaiting transmission. There was a pause. Then a packet of data arrived. The system decrypted it with an efficiency that made him feel obsolete. Text filled the center of the screen. Sharp and unforgiving. Field notice. Asset classification, hybrid reconnaissance unit. Status, lost during final campaign on U-17. Presumed destroyed. Updated directive. If unit is detected within operational radius, it is to be recovered and transferred to Helios Battalion custody. Condition of unit, secondary. Recovery objective, primary. Authorization, by any means required. Ryan read the lines twice. Outside the viewport. The dead horizon of U-17 stretched far. 12 years since the last bombardment. 12 years since anyone cared. What still crawled on this soil? He saw another screen. Another time. A thermal display showing human figures in a ravine. The orders had named them hostile combatants. The drones had obeyed. Only later had the reports mentioned the families sheltering there. He had watched the aftermath until his commanding officer pulled the feed from his console. Machines do not hesitate. They do not second guess. A directive marked, necessary. His hand tightened on the console edge. Knuckles pale. Helios Battalion. The name tasted like metal. A unit that believed in ending wars. By making sure the other side could never stand again. If they took this creature, they would not treat it as a survivor. They would treat it as leverage. The transmission waited for his acknowledgement. He stared at the words. By any means required. Until they blurred. Outpost THETA-9. The relay voice repeated. Do you confirm receipt of directive? He took a breath. I confirm receipt, he said. The line clicked off. The screen reverted to standard display. As if nothing had changed. But something had. He walked back to the med bay. Slower than before. The creature, no, the unit, as the directive named it, lifted its head as he entered. Its eyes searched his face. As if it could feel the shift in the air. He sat down on the floor. Instead of reaching for another instrument. The metal was cold. Through his uniform. For a while. He simply listened. To the rhythm of its breathing. And the faint hum. Of the station. They want you back, he said softly. Not because you're alive. Because you're useful. The animal's ears moved slightly. Reacting more to tone. Than to words. It lowered its head. But its eyes never left him. He thought of the ravine. Of the heat signatures. That had not had time to run. Of how easy it had been to obey. When all he had to look at were glowing shapes. On a screen. This time. The shape breathing in front of him was close enough to touch. He placed his hand slowly on its shoulder. The electric prickle returned. Stronger, now that he knew why. Skin cells, tuned to invisible currents, rippled through the station. A living instrument. A survivor. Of a war that had never asked what it wanted. He exhaled. "All right," he said. "If they come, they do not find you." The decision settled over him. With the finality of a launch order. But the weight felt different. Not destruction. Refusal. A refusal to add one more name. One more body. To a ledger already full. Outside. The artificial night cycle completed its slow descent. Lights dimmed to their lowest setting. Shadows stretched across the floor. The hum of systems shifted to a softer, steadier rhythm. For the first time since his assignment began, the outpost did not feel entirely empty. Night passed on U-17. Thin, cold, watchful. And by the time the station turned toward another pale dawn, Ryan Hale was no longer alone. The warning arrived before sunrise. A deep vibration moved through the station's hull. A pressure shift followed it. The lights flickered once. Ryan paused beside the service lift with his tools ready. He felt the air change before the sensors updated. A drop in temperature. Atmospheric displacement. Landing thrust. He checked the exterior feed. A dropship settled 30 meters from the airlock. Heat still bled across the scorched gravel. Panels opened along the flank. A ramp locked into place. 6 soldiers stepped out in sealed tactical suits. Each suit carried the Helios battalion emblem. A man without armor walked at their center. Commander Soren Kale. He wore a simple combat uniform. No visible rank display. Yet every soldier shifted around him. His stride was measured. Hands clasped behind his back. He moved like someone inspecting a place he already understood. Ryan locked the monitor and moved fast. He reached the med bay in seconds. Tallow hid under the examination table. Its eyes opened at his step. "You stay silent," he whispered. "They cannot know." Metal boots struck the floor outside. Perfect rhythm. The intercom chimed. "Outpost THETA-9. A voice said. "Inspection executive arriving. Unseal primary access." Ryan activated the protocol. He masked the med bay with maintenance status. He wiped the floor clean. No blood. No traces. He dimmed the lights to minimum. The creature pressed into the corner's shadow. He stepped into the hallway as the door cycled open. Commander Kale entered without looking at the cameras. He scanned the corridor slowly. As if he sensed heat patterns on his own. "Maintenance Officer Hale," Kale said. "Your outpost remains stable despite low staffing." "Yes," Ryan replied. "Station functional, no deviations." Kale looked past him. He checked walls, seams, and vents. "You received the field directive yesterday." Ryan nodded once. Kale's tone stayed level. "That directive cannot be delayed. The acid you detected can reduce casualties by 94%. 2,000 projected lives saved each year." Ryan did not move. No live acid registered here. Kale studied his face. 3 long seconds. Not suspicion. Calculation. "You understand what I am asking," he said. Ryan kept his stance. Kale turned toward the equipment bay. "War does not end when leaders say it ends. It ends when the tools become precise." He walked forward. Ryan followed him. Pulse steady by force of habit. Behind the wall, Tallow did not make a sound. 2 hours later, the search began. Ryan stood beside 2 patrol officers. They released drone scanners into the corridor. Small flight units drifted above the floor. Each one projected infrared beams and chemical sensors. One unit paused near the junction to the med bay. A soft alert chimed. Trace detection, the operator said. Blood fragment, less than 4 hours old. Ryan spoke fast. Maintenance injury. A servo blade slipped. The operator checked Ryan's gloves. A fresh cut marked his knuckle. The excuse held long enough for the scan to reset. But the drone did not move. It angled downward and scanned again. In the med bay, behind the bulkhead, Tallow pressed its ears flat. Its paws tapped the floor. 3 light taps. A pattern learned overnight. A warning. Electromagnetic disturbance approaching. Ryan stepped forward. Drone proximity is affecting the couplings, he said. I will reroute power. Please move to the upper deck. The officer hesitated, then nodded. Ryan moved through the service hatch. He slipped into the maintenance shaft. He reached the med bay through the auxiliary access. The creature stood by the emergency grate. Its skin twitched with agitation. Electric ripples moved along its hair. Stay with me, he whispered. We go under. He unlocked the floor panel. Cold air rose from the plasma shielding layer. The scent of ozone filled the shaft. The chamber below dampened storm interference. It also blocked drone scans. Ryan lowered himself first. He guided the creature down. The grate sealed above them. Boot steps passed overhead. In the dark, Tallow pressed against his shoulder. Its breath shook. The sound was raw and frightened. Time moved slowly in the confined space. Half a day later, artificial dusk returned. The lights dimmed as sandstorms formed outside. The search teams withdrew. They reported no confirmed anomaly. But Ryan knew the peace would not last. Commander Kale waited in the command room. Lights reflected across the reinforced glass. Drone data updated on the wall display. He did not turn when Ryan entered. You conceal well, Kale said. But not perfectly. Ryan stayed silent. Kale rotated the display. An old file opened. Grainy footage from another war. A prototype creature moved ahead of infantry. It paused seconds before a hidden drone detonated. Pulse Beast Recon 2. Ryan felt the floor shift beneath him. That program was terminated, he said. Kale nodded once. On record. Off record, the results exceeded expectations. They sensed drone patterns before activation. They saved lives. Ryan spoke softly. At what cost? Kale faced him fully. At the cost required to prevent greater cost. Alone, it saves one. Beside us, it saves thousands. Ryan looked at him. If we win by removing what still feels pain, we do not win. Kale's expression stayed neutral. Pain is data. Loss is data. Silence settled between them. Kale stepped closer. You were placed here for a reason. You understand drone warfare deeply. Empathy helps you function. But it also makes you imprecise. I prefer imprecise, Ryan said. Better that than silent while we break what survived us. Kale studied him again. Less analytic now. More curious. Mercy does not end wars, he said. No, Ryan replied. They end when someone refuses to continue. The room hummed as systems recalibrated. The thermal feed showed no movement outside. But both men knew time was short. Kale stepped back. I will file delayed compliance, he said. 6 hours. After that, a retrieval team arrives. Ryan asked, his voice steady, if they come armed? Kale answered without threat. They will not come to negotiate. He left the room. Ryan stayed where he was. Outside, the storm reached the horizon. Light scattered across the glass. Night returned slowly. The second in a chain of choices. 6 hours. A narrow interval between one life saved, or many saved another way. He returned to the lower deck. Tallow shifted as the hatch opened. Its eyes followed him. It sensed the pressure building around them. He sat beside it in the cramped space. The storm's vibration moved through the steel. You ran from war, he said. Now war runs toward you. The creature placed its head against his leg. He closed his eyes. The station felt smaller than the choice ahead. The sound reached him before he was fully awake. Not an alarm. Just a low, cycling hum. It rose and fell in a pattern his body knew. His mind caught up slower. Ryan lay still on the narrow bunk. His eyes were open. His heart was already beating faster. It was the diagnostic tone from the drone racks. Detuned by age and dust. But the rhythm was close to something else. Something older. Something he had worked years to forget. On the floor beside him, Tallow lifted its head. Its ears pointed toward the vibration. Its muscles tightened along its back. Electric shimmer rippled over its skin. Ryan could feel it through his socks. They stayed there, man and hybrid, listening. The same hum. Two bodies. Different memories. In his mind, the walls shifted. Gray steel became pressed plastic. Air tasted of burnt insulation. A control pod. Years ago. A different life. There had been another hum in that room. Clean. Sharp. 3 reconnaissance drones waited on a carrier. All armed. All listening for his command. He had sat at the console. Both hands on the rig. The ravine feed glowed across the screen. Broken rock. Long shadows. Small heat signatures near a fire. Command tagged them hostile. He asked for clarity. The reply came in numbers. Ratios. Probabilities. Acceptable risk. His hands moved. Now, on U-17, his fingers twitched against the blanket. As if the rig still sat beneath them. The drones descended on silent rotors. Thermal sensors painted the ravine in white and red. Crosshairs drifted over clustered shapes. He remembered the code. He remembered the moment before he pressed in. Impact flashed white. Heat bloomed across the feed. Stone fragments tore through the air. All signals blurred. Then the image cleared. He saw bodies. Not all carried weapons. A child under a tarp. A burned coat on a fallen figure. Another person running toward the blast. Not away from it. And one young soldier. Barely older than the recruits he trained. Trying to pull someone up the slope. His armor tag flashed friendly. The soldier lifted his face. It should have been impossible. The drone hovered high above. The feed was compressed and distorted. But the soldier looked straight into the lens. Straight at Ryan. Past all the code and noise. Not anger. Not forgiveness. Just one stunned question. How? The second blast erased him. Ryan watched the figure disappear in heat. He kept watching. Long after the scene lost value. Long after the ravine became another line in a report. Someone else turned the feed off. Now, years later, the hum of the drone racks bled through metal walls. Ryan pushed himself upright. The barracks came back into view. A low ceiling. Dry metal air. Ration dust instead of smoke. Tallow stood fully now. It balanced carefully on its uninjured leg. Its ears angled toward the door. Alert. Not afraid. You hear it too, he murmured. The creature looked at him. He saw the present. Fur marked by old harness scars. Eyes shaped by engineered design. But layered over it, for one brief instant, he saw the young soldier again. The same sharp awareness. The same silent question. His throat tightened. He reached for his boots. His fingers felt slow. The hum faded as the cycle ended. But the echo stayed inside his bones. He clipped his ID tag to his collar. He opened the door. Lights shifted in the corridor. Night mode faded to artificial morning. The clock display updated. Less than 2 hours had passed since Kale gave him 6. Time was not generous. He found Kale in the command room. Kale stood with his hands behind his back. The storm map shifted across the wall. Outside, U-17's sky had darkened again. Electric charge dragged across the horizon. The front is moving faster than forecast, Kale said. High-altitude ionization, perfect cover. For what? Ryan asked. Kale looked over his shoulder. Silent M operation, limited strike. No orbital trail for later complaints. This is a retrieval mission, Ryan said. You have the location. You do not need a strike. Cale's voice stayed even. When people hide assets, they break protocol. I prefer no surprises. Ryan stepped closer to the glass. This station holds no hostiles. It holds something worse, Cale said. Ambiguity. Ambiguity kills slowly and thoroughly. On the display, static traced the storm's edge. Sensor numbers climbed. Ryan felt something wrong in the pattern. Not natural weather alone. Something writing inside it. What did you deploy? He asked. Cale did not hide it. Plasma-sheathed drones. Shielded rotors. They ride the boundary layer. They discharge through pre-selected targets. The storm masks the trail. Ryan's jaw tightened. Your targets are inside my station. They're inside Earth's acid, Cale said. And I do not strike what need not be struck. Precision is the only mercy war allows. He turned away. Prepare for system interruptions. There may be communication noise. The first impact did not make sound. It made absence. Ryan was in the lower corridor when Earthlink went black. One moment, status lights glowed green. The next, they vanished. A faint afterimage stayed in his eyes. He tapped the panel. No response. The network blinked, reset, and fell to local mode. The uplink to orbit was gone. A tremor hit the floor. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Metal screamed above him. Something burned through an external plate. He did not wait. Under, he said. Tallow was already moving. The creature had begun pacing seconds earlier. Its skin shivered with invisible current. Now it bolted down the corridor. Its claws scraped hard on metal. It ran as if something chased its nerves. Ryan followed. The air vibrated in harsh waves. Too low to hear. Too sharp to ignore. He caught Tallow near the junction hatch. The creature stopped. It turned. Then it slammed into his legs. There was no time to think. One moment he stood upright. The next, Tallow drove him sideways. They crashed into the narrow recess. A line of white cut through the space he had left. For half a second, the corridor filled with light. Hot plasma vented from a punctured conduit. Guided by the drone's discharge. The beam carved a glowing scar on the far wall. Molten metal hissed as air cooled it. The blast punched the breath out of him. Heat rolled across his face. Then it vanished. He lay still. Heart pounding in the ringing silence. Tallow stood over him. Its body braced. Eyes wide. Fur crackling with leftover charge. The bioscan on his belt chimed weakly. It tried to track half a dozen field spikes. He dragged them both into the shaft. Another tremor shook the station. A distant boom followed. The drones were not striking only corridors. They were walking fire across the hull. For several minutes, attacks came in pulses. No sirens. No countdowns. Only sudden bursts of pressure and light. The drones targeted structural weak points. They tried to trigger controlled failures. The station fought back on its own. Fire systems activated. Bulkheads sealed and unsealed. Pressure rerouted to prevent collapse. Ryan watched updates scroll on his wrist. Sections went dark. Others came online on emergency power. Time stretched thin. Minutes felt like hours. Measured between impacts. When the last tremor faded, the station steadied. Lights flickered. Then held on low power. Air systems cycled once. They pushed out smoke and heat. Somewhere above, someone screamed. The sound cut off fast. Ryan pushed the hatch open. The corridor was scorched but intact. He smelled burnt plastic and hot wiring. Coolant left a sharp metallic scent. Tallow climbed out behind him. It shook itself hard. He checked the panel. No green lights returned. The uplink stayed dead. Earthlink was a blank icon. They were alone now. Not just in distance. But in signal. He found Cale near the secondary airlock. Part of the overhead plating had collapsed. Two soldiers braced it with temporary supports. Kale sat against the wall. His sleeve was burned through. Blood marked a shallow cut on his arm. He looked irritated, not injured. This was not supposed to breach plating, he said. One discharge vector misaligned. You brought plasma into an old outpost, Ryan said. It misaligned because this place is worn. And because someone rerouted power. Kale replied. You are not as neutral as your file claims. Ryan did not answer. Tallow waited at the corridor's edge, half hidden by the beam. Its ears tracked each metal clang. Its body stayed tense but unmoving. Kale followed Ryan's gaze. You brought it closer, he said softly. Ryan's shoulders tightened. It is safer where I can see it. For you, Kale said. Not for the rest of us. He gestured for the soldiers to step back. They moved away, working on a junction box. The corridor felt suddenly quiet. Kale looked at Ryan, then at Tallow. You did not dive when the first strike hit, he said. It knocked you down. Something else moved you. Ryan did not deny it. That unit extended your life by one engagement, Kale said. You still intend to hide it? Yes, Ryan said. Kale did not show anger. Only a deeper, tired curiosity. You did not help brace the ceiling, he said. You checked on it first. Heat rose along Ryan's neck. You had your soldiers. It was alone. You did not save me, Kale said. You saved it. Ryan met his eyes. Because it has never killed to survive. Silence held between them. Kale's jaw tightened once. You assume intent, he said. You think it carries no weight because its orders are silent. Ryan shook his head. I assume design. It feels fields. It does not choose who burns. We built the drones. We set the rules. We carry the weight. Kale studied him. His eyes narrowed slightly. Not in threat. In analysis. I have seen guilt used as a shield, he said. You do not use it that way. You use it as an anchor. If I lose it, Ryan said, I fall back into the logic that brought me here. Kale glanced at the sealed plate. Logic that wins wars. Logic that filled that ravine, Ryan said quietly. Kale's eyes flickered. Recognition. He had read the file. He knew which battle Ryan meant. I requested this assignment after that night, Ryan added. They call it reassignment. But it is exile. A place for people who read collateral reports twice. And yet, Kale said. Here you are again. Choosing who breaks and who survives. Your history did not spare you this. It delivered you to it. He pushed himself up. He accepted a soldier's hand. Then shrugged it away. Helios battalion ends cycles, he said. We use every tool. If this unit senses drone fields early, we can redirect fire. We can walk men through storms. By leashing a living thing to every blast, Ryan said. Kale did not flinch. If it stays with you, it protects one man. A guilty man in an obsolete station. With me, it protects thousands. Ryan felt Tallow move closer. Its shoulder brushed his leg. Its breathing had steadied. But its skin still held faint charge. Like air after lightning. He thought of the young soldier in the ravine. The final look. The heat that erased him. He thought of Tallow in the med bay. Watching him as the directive scrolled. It had not known words. It had felt his body change. Wars always give this equation, Kale said. One life here. Many lives there. The rest is sentiment. Ryan shook his head. No. Wars give that equation when we stop looking for a third line. And do you see a third line? Kale asked. Ryan did not answer at once. A distant rumble rolled through the structure. The storm shifted above the plains. Charge lit every edge of the station. Hours had passed since dawn. The day felt stretched thin. Impacts. Memories. Decisions. All in one endless line. Right now, Ryan said. I see this. You damaged my station. Cut my link to Earth. And turned retrieval into siege. I owe you nothing. Kale's voice stayed calm. You owe the future something. I do, Ryan said. That is why I will not hand it another being built to walk into fire." Kale exhaled through his nose. "Then hear this," he said. "As of now, this outpost is a combat zone. All non-compliant elements are subject to removal. All assets are subject to seizure." The words settled like new gravity. Inspection was over. Cooperation was over. Shared command was gone. "This place stored weapons," Kale said. "Today, it becomes one." He turned to his soldiers. "We fortify. We hold until retrieval arrives. No one enters or leaves without my order." He looked back at Ryan. "You may stand with us," he said. "Or stand in front of us." Ryan did not move. Tallow stayed beside him. Eyes steady. Listening to the hum of a station becoming a battlefield. Outside, the sky deepened. Gray shifted toward night. The third evening rose over U-17. Another day circling the same wound. The next strike came at dawn. Not from the sky. From inside the systems. Circuits flared in brief spasms. Tactical drones circled low above the station. Their sensors scraped the hull like claws on thin metal. Ryan stood in the auxiliary repair bay. Tools spread across the bench. His hands moved fast. His breathing stayed steady. Tallow paced beside him. Its injured leg improved on stable ground. Each time a drone passed, it stopped. Its head tilted. It sensed the electromagnetic wake before it arrived. Ryan did not raise the defensive field. He shut it down. He entered the manual override. He cut the auto response loop. Then he linked two broken modulators to the suppression plate. Their unstable output fed directly into the grid. A soldier watching would panic. It looked like he dismantled his own protection. In a way, he was. The output was too weak to cover the zone. Instead, it made a stuttering pulse. A heartbeat that stumbled but did not stop. Each fluctuation forced drone tracking to recalc. Micro delays appeared as they tried to regain focus. Tallow felt the shift first. Its skin buzzed in slow waves. The ripple crawled up Ryan's arms. He checked the timing. Then he lowered the output by half. "No pattern," he said softly. He adjusted the controls. He let the instability lead. Not a clean military signal. The more jagged the pulse, the harder it was for predictive AI to guess the next strike. Kale appeared at the bay door. He arrived just as Ryan secured the second modulator. "You disabled your dampening grid," Kale said. "It was too clean," Ryan answered. "Your drones prefer clean signals. That grid was built to keep you alive. It kept everyone predictable." Kale stepped inside. He studied the tangled wiring. "This is not a defensive pattern." "No," Ryan said. "It's noise. Noise doesn't win battles." Ryan did not look up. "It confuses people who think battles act like equations." Silence passed. Ryan linked the bioscan interface to the modulators. The unit chirped in confusion. Tallow tilted its head. Then it pressed its flank against the console. The sensor read that bioelectric feedback. The output slid further off resonance. The modulator light flickered. Then it held the erratic pulse. Ryan let out a slow breath. "There." Kale watched him. Logic shifted behind his eyes. He weighed something unfamiliar. "This is not strategy," he said. "It is," Ryan replied. "Just not built to win." "Then what does it do?" "It buys breath," Ryan said quietly. "Sometimes breath is all you need. Enough for people to see past the blast radius." Kale looked at Tallow. "And if breath costs more lives?" Ryan met his gaze. "It won't." He was not certain. But he believed it more than the alternative. Many hours slipped by. Outside, the drones slowed. The pulse forced them to pause between scans. They widened their arcs to compensate. On tactical feeds, hesitation appeared. A place where efficiency should have been. Inside the station, something shifted too. Not victory. Not safety. Just room to breathe. The next engagement did not start with an explosion. It started with a breath. A turbine in the central corridor stuttered once. It inhaled again. Then it stabilized. That tiny pause lasted 2 seconds. Then a drone fired through the auxiliary hatch. A silent plasma burst cut through sealant toward flesh. Tallow was already moving. It did not move like a trained animal. It moved like someone who learned survival the hard way. Its hind paws scraped metal. It slid low along the floor. Ryan followed on instinct. But the creature's pace forced him into a new rhythm. The plasma burst hit the far wall. It carved a molten line inches above the floor. Ryan rolled behind the console. Tallow skidded beside him. Its chest pressed low to absorb impact. Its skin pulsed with charge. The bioscan struggled to read threat from response. They did not counterattack. They read the field. A drone passed overhead. It chased the last trace it could lock onto. Ryan held his breath. Tallow did too. Its ears pointed forward. Its eyes narrowed. It listened to something inside the wall. The disturbance came. A faint shudder ran through the plating. A compression wave. The pre-discharge vibration of another plasma strike. Tallow surged up. It pressed a paw to the floor. It tapped twice. Ryan moved before thinking. He shifted left as the corridor erupted. Sparks tore through the dark. A drone cut power to the emergency lights. Blackout followed. 3 long seconds. Only molten scars lit the hall. Tallow stood in the dark. Shoulders low. Head angled. As if tasting the field. Ryan whispered, "You're not fighting to win." The creature looked at him. Its breath stayed steady. "You're fighting so I can choose." He did not know if it understood. But it stayed with him. They moved through the corridor as drones recalibrated. Each time a pulse built in the air. Tallow shifted its weight toward the direction. Ryan felt the signal through trembling hands. The interference pulse grew in the modulators. A burst fired wide, hitting a panel instead of the node. Another clipped a crate instead of a coolant line. Small, imperfect wins. Bought not by force, but by refusing to mirror force. When they reached the command room, Cale stood behind a reinforced rail. A portable console glowed beside him. His uniform was scorched at the shoulder. "You're adapting without counterfire," he said. Ryan wiped dust from his visor. "Counterfire invites escalation." "This isn't escalation?" Cale pointed at the melted wall. "It is," Ryan said. "But it's contained. It ends here if we let it." Cale studied the readings. His expression stayed hard. But something in his posture loosened. "You know," he said. "When we built these drones, we imagined a network that sensed human fear. To preempt hesitation. And did it work?" Cale looked at Tallow. "Until something listened harder than the machines." The drone feed crackled. A warning rolled overhead. Another wave approached. This time, Cale said nothing. He stepped back. He let Ryan move. For the first time since the operation began. 2 people, and 1 engineered survivor, reacted without acting like combatants. The pulse came. It passed over them. It missed. Half a day had passed since the first strike. Time was no longer measured in tactical hours. It was measured in moments of survival between choices still unmade. It ended without a final shot. Not because the drones lost charge. Because Cale called them off. Ryan stood near the breach point. He bent over an exposed conduit. His breath shook with fatigue. Tallow leaned beside his knee. Its fur was scorched. Its eyes were steady. Cale walked toward them slowly. No weapon drawn. Behind him, his soldiers worked in silence. None looked at the creature. "You could have overridden my command feed," Cale said. "You had access." Ryan wiped sweat from his brow. "And what would that change?" "You could have forced a retreat." Ryan shook his head. "Retreat isn't what we need." Cale studied the ruined corridor. "You see this as progress?" "No," Ryan said. "I see it as proof." "Proof of what?" "That not all force requires firing first." A long silence settled. Cale exhaled. "We fight to end wars. But if the way we fight becomes war itself? His words faded. He looked at Tallow. Then what do we end? Ryan placed a hand on Tallow's shoulder. Its skin pulsed with faint charge. The rhythm steadied now that the drones slept. Sometimes, he said. To end war, you don't fire. You don't strike. You wait long enough to choose differently. Cale asked, and if waiting costs lives? Ryan met his gaze. So does the right shot if you fire too soon. If you fire before seeing who stands in the crosshairs. Tallow's ears shifted. Deep in the station, a generator cycled on. Weak, but steady. Cale stepped back. A retrieval ship is still en route. I know. They expect compliance. Ryan nodded. They won't get it. Cale held his eyes. Your plan risks everything. Yes. But it is the only plan here, Cale said. That does not begin with destruction. Ryan's voice dropped. Because it begins with refusal. Cale did not argue. Outside, the storm over U-17 thinned. A strip of pale evening light reached the courtyard. Smoke settled. Thunder rolled once. Then faded. The fourth night on U-17 closed with the old engines settling back into rhythm. And the tired breaths of those who chose not to press the trigger. The last attack did not wait for orders. It began deep inside the station's bones. Damaged circuits still held the memory of impact. Ryan stood in the junction corridor. One hand gripped a support strut. He listened to the weak hum of emergency power. Tallow lay beside him. A makeshift bandage wrapped its flank. Its eyes were half closed but alert. For a moment, only recycled air hissed softly. Then every light flickered. The floor vibrated with a new rhythm. Shorter. Sharper. Not storm waves. The clipped pulse of systems obeying an outside command. Overhead, a panel flashed a new icon. Autonomous drone protocol. Self-denial sequence. Ryan's throat tightened. No, he whispered. The battered drones had taken enough damage. Their last safeguard had triggered. If they could not return with data, they would not return at all. They would erase what remained. The first blast hit above the cargo bay. A concussive roar rolled down the corridor. Dust rained from the ceiling. A second later, metal screamed on the far side. Another drone spent its remaining charge on a support beam. The station lurched. Ryan slammed into the wall. Pain stabbed his shoulder. He fell hard. Air left his lungs in a sharp gasp. Tallow scrambled for footing. Its claws skidded on metal as the floor tilted. Warning lights flashed red overhead. A structural alert barked from a nearby panel. Primary support compromised, the old synthetic voice said. Hull integrity decreasing. Seek immediate cover. Another shockwave hit. Closer this time. A white-hot line of plasma punched through the bulkhead. Molten fragments scattered across the corridor. A glowing shard spun toward Ryan's chest. He had no time to move. Tallow did. The creature launched forward. A burst of ragged strength carried it across the corridor. It slammed into Ryan, pinning him to the wall. The shard struck its side instead. It burned a deep line through fur and skin. It bounced across the floor with a hiss. The smell of scorched hair filled the air. Tallow's body shuddered. Muscles locked around the wound. Its claws dug into the deck as it held the line. Ryan gripped its shoulder. He felt the wild spike of its bioelectric field. Stay with me, he said. Stay here. The floor steadied for one heartbeat. Then it sagged again. Another drone detonated near the outer ring. Above them, a walkway tore free. Its fall ended in a heavy crash. Footsteps pounded toward them. Commander Soren Cale stepped through the dust. A rifle in his hands. Soot streaked across his face. Two soldiers followed, struggling to stay upright. Cale scanned the scene fast. Ryan on the floor. Tallow burned and trembling. A plasma scar across the deck. A ceiling crack widening by the second. The rifle barrel jerked toward Tallow. The creature's lips pulled back. Not a snarl. A grimace of pain. It did not rush him. It did not move. It held its ground. The simple choice lay before Kale. One shot. Asset neutralized. Operation simplified. A clean report. His finger rested on the trigger guard. For a fraction of a second, the corridor echoed with an old war. Men dragging wounded comrades. Charts that weighed lives against lines of advance. The math behind every order he had given. Then he saw what did not fit the math. A creature built to sense fields, not fear. Using a ruined body to shield a man who refused to weaponize it. "Stand down," Kale said. His own soldiers stared at him. "Sir?" one asked. "I said stand down." He lowered the rifle. The station shuddered again. The last drone detonated outside. A dull echo rolled through the hull. Then silence returned. Only loose metal rattled. Only rough breathing filled the air. Smoke drifted through the corridor. Red lights dimmed to amber. The alert dropped from urgent to critical but stable. Talos' legs shook. Ryan slid an arm under its chest. He held it upright. His own shoulder throbbed. But he did not let go. "We get it to Med," he said. Kale nodded once. No one fired. The retrieval ship's signal cut through the static 10 minutes later. Ryan watched from the secondary console as Kale snapped a headset into place. The bridge glowed with half-dead screens and tangled cables. A cracked panel sparked once, then went dark as a fuse failed. "This is Helios Retrieval Command. Vessel Aegis Crown," a clipped voice said. "We read internal detonations. Status of asset and outpost." Kale looked at Ryan, then toward the med bay feed. Tallow lay on the examination table. Its flank was wrapped in layered dressings. Burn gel cooled the worst injury. Its breath came slow and rough. The bioscan beside it showed uneven but rising lines. Ryan stood at its side. He had not stepped away since they carried it in. Kale exhaled and keyed the transmitter. "Outpost Theta 9 has sustained severe structural damage," he said. "Multiple sections compromised. Drone units executed self-denial protocols following field interference." "And the hybrid unit?" the voice pressed. "Confirmed condition. Our orders list recovery as priority." Kale watched the monitor. He saw Ryan's hand resting on Talow's shoulder. He saw the rise and fall of its wounded flank. He heard the faint beep of the bioscan through the open channel. He looked at his own hands. They were steady. "There is no functional unit to recover," he said. Silence followed. "Clarify," the voice demanded. Kale did not hesitate. "Hybrid recon asset, pulse beast designation. Caught inside overlapping self-denial fields. Exposed to thermal discharge at close range. Structural integrity failed. Biological systems collapsed. Asset destroyed." Ryan looked up sharply from the med bay. Their eyes met through the camera feed. "You are certain," the voice said. Kale's tone remained steady. "Certain enough to sign my name to it." A brief pause. "Understood, Commander Kale. Outpost Theta 9 holds no further strategic value. Prepare to evacuate personnel. Leave the facility in decommissioned state. We will mark the location as inactive." Kale's jaw shifted. "Acknowledged." The line went dead. He removed the headset and set it gently on the console. For a long moment, he stood still. He listened to the weak hum of the wounded station. Ryan's voice came through the intercom. "You just lied," he said. Kale turned toward the speaker. "I followed a different order." There was no different order. Kale looked up, as if reading something on the ceiling. "There was no order that said I had to keep this war alive." He walked down to the med bay. Inside, antiseptic mixed with the smell of burned fur. Talow's breathing had steadied. Each inhale still caught at the end. Its ears twitched when Kale's boots crossed the floor. Ryan kept one hand on its shoulder. "You risk your rank," Ryan said softly. "Your career, your unit." Kale gave a small, humorless smile. "Careers end, wars try not to. And you want this one to end." Kale looked at the wounded creature. "I want one less thing in this galaxy built to walk toward fire only because we ordered it to." He nodded toward the corridor. "I'll take my people out. Officially, this place is dead. No one sends another team for something that doesn't exist on paper." Ryan frowned. "And us? You were listed as outpost maintenance," Kale said. "No combat role. No active deployment record. Your file will say you died with the facility." Ryan absorbed the words silently. "You can come back," Kale added. "You can use this as extraction. Stand in front of whatever tribunal they form. Try to shift policy from a chair, not from a ruined corridor." Ryan looked again at Tallow. It blinked once. Slow. Heavy. As if forced to climb back toward awareness. "I would walk into another room of screens," Ryan said. "Another ravine. Another risk graph. Another set of signatures I can't see as abstract anymore." Kale waited. Ryan shook his head. "Someone has to stay and make sure this outpost stays what you just told them it is." "Which is dead," Ryan said. "To them." He brushed Tallow's fur gently, avoiding the burned patch. "And alive to whatever is left here that is no longer a weapon." Kale studied him. Then nodded slowly. 2 hours later, the last Helios footsteps left the station. Their locking doors echoed like a quiet funeral for an old war outpost. Outside, the retrieval ship's engines rose in pitch. They faded as the vessel climbed toward orbit, carrying its soldiers and commander away from U-17. The sky above the outpost grew quiet again. For the first time in years, Theta 9 belonged to no one's maps. Systems settled into a fragile balance. Ryan rerouted power from long-range transmitters into life support and structural seals. He shut down the guidance beacons. He locked the targeting arrays in permanent diagnostics, a sleep they would never wake from. The station stopped broadcasting that it existed. Days passed in a quiet rhythm with no alert schedules. Morning meant checking seals, patching cracks, and listening for new groans in the hull. Evening meant cleaning burns, replacing bandages, and watching Tallow's breathing even out as the worst of the wound healed. It moved slowly now. The burn along its side would leave a thick scar under the fur. But the light in its eyes sharpened as pain retreated. It still flinched at certain tones, aging capacitors, pressure leaks, yet the fear had drained from those reactions. They were responses now. Not reflexes written by someone else's battle plan. One afternoon, Ryan stood with the outer hatch open, staring across the pale, scarred plain. U-17 stretched in every direction, shaped by old blasts and hardened by thin air. Tallow stepped beside him. It pressed one paw against the metal, then into the dust. The wind carried the dry scent of old propellant and drifting sand. Its ears flicked as it tasted the field beyond. No drones. No guided pulses. Just the low background hum of a wounded world trying to rest. "Go on," Ryan said softly. The creature took another step. For a moment, it walked ahead of him, just as the old design brief demanded. But there were no patrols behind it now. No soldiers using its senses to avoid mines. It reached a small rise and stopped. Ryan joined it there. They stood together, man and engineered survivor, looking across a horizon that had once been a target grid and was now only broken rock holding weak light. "There are some beings," he said quietly, "who survive not because they're strongest." Tallow shifted its weight and leaned lightly against his leg. But because no one taught them to hate long enough to make it the only thing they carry. The creature tilted its head, considering the sound rather than the meaning. Ryan looked at the sky. The first sunrise in 10 years on U-17 arrived without engines. No rotors. No drones. No warships dropping out of orbit. Only wind, and the breathing of 2 survivors. He thought of the ravine. Of the young soldier who had looked up at a machine he never saw. This time, there was no crosshair between gaze and sky. No trigger binding one life to another's end. Ryan rested his hand on Tallow's neck. "War ends," he said, "when we stop feeding it new bodies and new reasons." Tallow pressed against him for a heartbeat, then stepped forward, walking down the slope at a calm pace. It no longer checked behind every second. It no longer rushed ahead. It moved like something that finally believed the ground might hold more than fire. Ryan followed. Behind them, Outpost Theta 9 stood silent against the bruised horizon. Its guns were dead. Its beacons dark. Its last purpose no longer to launch weapons, but to hold a small, stubborn pocket of space where nothing new would be trained to burn. In a universe still full of campaigns and directives, it was the smallest of refusals. And sometimes, he thought, that was how wars truly ended. Not with the last shot fired, but with the first choice to let something made for killing become only a living thing again. In the quiet that followed, Ryan stood on the empty ridge above THETA 9. Pale light settled across a world that no longer asked for blood. Behind him, the outpost slept without weapons, without orders, without engines calling for another war. Beside him, Tallow breathed steadily. No longer a tool. No longer a target. Just a living creature learning how to exist without fear. For the first time in a decade, dawn rose without a machine breaking the sky. And Ryan understood that some endings are not written by victory. They come when someone chooses to stop feeding a fire that should have died long ago. If this story moved you, take a moment to like the video. Share it with someone who loves sci-fi. And subscribe so you won't miss the next journey beyond the edge of war.